Welcome to the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. Today we're going to be doing the North Rim Drive, and I know that sign there says South Rim Drive. And if you have a look, you can see a bridge over there that goes over the Yellowstone River. That's the Chittenden Bridge. And those of you who've seen a few of these virtual Yellowstone tours will know about Chittenden. But at this time, I'll tell you more about him. What I'd like to do, even though we're doing the North Rim Drive today, is to show you a little bit about this area. Basically, this road has come up from the Hayden Valley. We then come to the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, and the first turnoff is over the Chittenden Bridge to what's called Artist Point. For my money, that is the best view of the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, and if you do ever make it out here to Yellowstone National Park, I do highly recommend that you take the time to go and see Artist Point at Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. The next turnoff that we're coming to, for some reason the Park Service has taken down the sign. There it is over there. But this road that we're coming to on our right goes to the Brink of the Upper Falls. Now you can see our virtual Yellowstone tours on both the Brink of the Upper Falls Trail as well as the Artist Point Trail. In fact, you can see all of our virtual Yellowstone tours at virtualyellowstonetours.com. But we're about to come to the turnoff to the North Rim Drive. And if you take a look at a map of the park, which you can see at our site, westyellowstonelodge.com/map, that's westyellowstonelodge.com/map, you can see exactly where we are. We are just a little to the south or a little below Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. Now this here is the turnoff to the brink of, it's not the turnoff, excuse me, this is the parking lot for the Brink of the Lower Falls. You'll recall I previously mentioned to you the Brink of the Upper Falls. You'll find that this road has got quite a few vantage points, quite a few view sites of the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, which is down in that direction over there. There are three main viewpoints, if you like, and those are the ones that I'm going to focus on. Like, for example, if you take that trail over there, that's a delightful trail that will take you to many viewpoints of the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. But we're going to focus, and there you can see Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone right over there. We're going to focus on this drive on Lookout Point, Grand Viewpoint, and Inspiration Point. I'd mentioned to you, if you take a look at a map of the park, you'll see that Yellowstone is a huge park, and the roads through the park make up a massive figure of 8. You'll see there's a road more or less in the middle that divides the massive figure of 8 into two loops. We call them the upper loop and the lower loop of Yellowstone, and tour companies like ours divide their tours into separate days on the upper and lower loops. And you'll see that that road runs from Norris Geyser Basin in the west to Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, or Canyon Village, to the east. And all the way through here we've got views of the canyon. That trail that I showed you is following this road. And if you take a look at where Canyon Village is on the right or east side, and just drop down a little, you'll come to Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. And this is Lookout Point. That's one of the three main points that I mentioned to you. And I hope to find a parking spot here. And once I do, we can get out and take a look at the views from Lookout Point. It's pretty windy out today, so I'll be doing the narration a little later. One of the biggest treats at Lookout Point is not the scenery of the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, impressive as that is, but we always tell guests who stay at our motel, and also our tour guests, to look out on the left as they're walking up over here and you'll see some hoodoo type formations. You can see it more or less in the center of the screen, and I'm zooming in. That is an osprey's nest, and it really is a treat when the female osprey is sitting on her nest. Generally speaking, the ospreys return to Yellowstone in April and leave again in September. They generally lay 2, maybe 3 eggs in somewhere around May or June, and the eggs hatch in about 4 to 5 weeks. Unfortunately, the number of osprey in Yellowstone has been on the decline, and I do go into that in more detail in another one of our virtual Yellowstone tours, in fact a couple of them, the ones that center around Yellowstone Lake, because of the way that the lake trout have been eating up so many of the native cutthroat trouts. The lake trout are an invasive species. That, by the way, is the Lower Yellowstone Falls. Isn't it amazing how you can hear the sound of it so far away? They're just such impressive falls. You can obviously walk down to the brink of the lower falls as well as the brink of the upper falls. We don't include the brink of the lower falls hike on our actual Yellowstone tours because the hike back up is pretty arduous, but we can do it if you want a private Yellowstone tour. Now, when you're standing at Lookout Point or one of the other points and you're staring down there at the Yellowstone River flowing through the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, keep your eyes open for thermal features at the bottom. They're easier to see on a cold day, of course, because of the steam coming up, which will be much more visible on a cold day than on a warm day. There are several of them to be seen. We do include the hike to the brink of the upper falls on our Yellowstone tours. I'll get back to that in a minute. You see on the left there where those people in the white and the light shirts are coming up. That is the North Rim Trail, or a part of it, which you can see in another of our virtual Yellowstone tours. I was saying that we do include the hike to the brink of the upper falls. It's not anywhere near as long, and although the walk back up is fairly steep, it, as I say, is a lot shorter, and it is a lot easier for people to do, and the views are really spectacular. We're heading out of Lookout Point on our way to Grand Viewpoint, the second of the 3 main overlooks of the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. The Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone actually got its name when Lewis and Clark translated a Native American word which basically meant Yellowstone, and they gave it the name in English, Yellowstone, and that is where Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone gets its name from, and I will tell you more about that after we've taken a look at Grand Viewpoint. As you'll see in a minute, or perhaps more accurately, as you won't see in a minute, you can't see the lower falls from Grand Viewpoint. You can't, for that matter, see the upper falls either. But the views of the canyon walls from here are really spectacular with the yellow color of the rock and the fine detail you can see. Now, right across the way there is Artist Point. I've mentioned before that for my money, Artist Point has the best views of Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. Artist Point has to be accessed from the South Rim Drive, and remember, we're on the North Rim Drive at the moment. You can see Artist Point in another one of our virtual Yellowstone tours in our YouTube channel and also at virtualyellowstonetours.com. You can also see the South Rim Trail hike in another one of our virtual Yellowstone tours in our YouTube channel. Both the South Rim hike and the North Rim hike are really spectacular. Just think about it. You've got the forests, you've got the Yellowstone River, you've got 2 waterfalls, and you've got this incredible canyon, the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. Remember, just as you could do at Lookout Point, when you stare down into the bottom of the canyon and you're looking at the Yellowstone River as it flows through the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, once again, keep your eyes open for those thermal features. And once again, obviously the easiest way to see them is to look for the steam that is likely to be coming up from the thermal features. This is the very upper viewing point at Artist Point. You can see what I mean here about the amazingly fine detail in the rock and the precision of the lines that you see. And when you take a look at your pictures or videos later, you'll be amazed, or at least I always am, at just how fine the detail is in the photographs. If you look on the left now, where you can see those people walking towards me, that once again is the North Rim hiking trail. As I mentioned before, it really is a wonderful trail, and in addition to the three main viewing points, Lookout Point, Grand Viewpoint where I'm now, and Inspiration Point, our next point, there's also numerous other viewpoints of the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone which you can enjoy if you do decide to take that hike. And remember that you can see it in our YouTube channel as well. We're leaving Grand Viewpoint now on our way to Inspiration Point. I was telling you about how it was Lewis and Clark who translated the original Native American word into Yellowstone. And you can see when you come to this part of the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone where the name Yellowstone comes from, because the rocks definitely have a yellowish tinge to them. You can see that all over the place. Ironically though, people think that it's the sulfur that is creating the yellow color. It's not, it's actually iron, and I know that we would expect ferrous or rust to make the rocks go red, and in some places it does, but it's actually the presence of the iron in the rock that's giving it its yellow color. I was talking about Lewis and Clark, and the irony is that these two great explorers never actually made it to the thermal features of Yellowstone. What happened was, after they had taken their trip to the west coast and come out in Oregon, they started making their way back, and somewhere to the north of Yellowstone they decided to split up. Captain Meriwether Lewis went one way, and Clark took the legendary Sacagawea with him, and she showed them a path over what we now know as Bozeman Pass. And Bozeman is a city in southwest Montana, and Bozeman Pass basically connects Bozeman with the small town of Gardner, which is to the north of Yellowstone. And I was saying that it was very ironic because Clark actually didn't even see Yellowstone. When he was in Gardner, I mentioned that it connected Bozeman and Gardner. It actually connected Bozeman and Livingston. And when Clark came through, he was basically 40 miles to the north of Mammoth Hot Springs, and didn't even know, of course, that those great terraces were at Mammoth. And Clark took an exploratory trip down the Yellowstone River, and as I mentioned before, didn't even get to see the thermal features here in Yellowstone, but that is the subject of another story. I mentioned that it was ironic because there are quite a few places that are named after Captain Meriwether Lewis. You've got the Lewis River, Lewis Falls, Lewis Canyon, and as I said, Lewis never actually made it here. So we're now at Inspiration Point. I'll find a parking place and show you a few views of Inspiration Point as well. Take a look ahead of me there on the left. You'll see a couple of bicycles, and what some people like to do is to take the North Rim Trail Drive. It's one way heading from the parking lot at the brink of the Lower Falls up to Inspiration Point. So they'll take that drive and then leave some bicycles over here at Inspiration Point. Then they'll leave their car at the Waipiti Lake trailhead, which is very close to the start of both the South Rim trail hike and the North Rim trail hike. You can then do the hike, which is 3.2 miles long, or a little over 5 kilometers, and look carefully there off in the distance as I'm going to zoom in if I can, and you can see the lower falls off in the distance. Anyway, what I was saying is, what people like to do, instead of having to do the 3.2 mile hike or 5k hike twice, they'll do it once, then get on the bicycles that they've left over here and take the easy bike ride, which is more or less downhill just about the entire way, and it's a quicker and easier way to get back from Inspiration Point to where you've left your car, once again at the Waipiti Lake trailhead. Gosh, just listen to the sound of the Yellowstone River as it echoes through the canyon walls on its way up here. Check this out. This is pretty cool. I've mentioned a couple of times about the thermal features that you can see generally alongside the banks of the Yellowstone River. This one is about a third of the way up, and it is unusual for it to be as visible as it is today because it's pretty warm out here today.
Oh, allergies. I'm not liking it.
Thank you. Up ahead of me is where the North Rim hiking trail eventually comes out at Inspiration Point. And as we leave Inspiration Point, that is the last of the three main viewpoints of the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. This road that we're on now, this little side road, will take us back to the main North Rim Drive, and from there we can only go right. It's a one-way road, and we'll eventually get back to Canyon Village. Thank you for joining me on another one of our virtual Yellowstone tours. Remember that you can see all of our virtual Yellowstone tours at virtualyellowstonetours.com. That's virtualyellowstonetours.com. If you, this is at Glacial Rock. If you enjoy our virtual Yellowstone tour series, please consider giving us a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. Otherwise, I hope you make it out to Yellowstone someday.